Welcome, everybody, to Conspiracy Chronicles this Sunday evening, the 18th of March, 2012. I'm Joe Joseph, Tim Watts at my side here, and our guest tonight, because 2 hours of radio just is never enough for one Sunday evening, is good old Popeye from federaljack.com and down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. Arr, Popeye.
Arr, shiver me timbers.
Captain Ramius, Timmy.
So, folks, I mean, there was a comment in the chat room just before the broadcast began that said, sky is still up. Well, the two subjects we're going to go over this evening is this executive order that was written by Obama on Friday and his cronies. It really wasn't written by Obama. Obama was golfing or on vacation somewhere. But his handlers wrote this executive order, and it got some very, very good attention. It went viral on Federal Jack. It went viral on Not For Sale to NWO, also on the Intel Hub. Alex Jones did a video about this. It's very important to understand what this executive order is all about and what it means. Now, does that mean that the sky is falling right now? Absolutely not. That's not what it means, not even in the slightest. But this is a preparation executive order. This is something that they are preparing for something big. Wouldn't you say, Tim?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You look back at the entire chain of, everything that's been happening since 2000, but in particular since last November, just November of 2011, all the things that have happened every 9 to 10 days, a new act is put in place. Something happens that curtails our constitutional rights. It's just amazing. There's a hell of a schedule going on right now by somebody.
Right. Absolutely. One thing I would like to point out is you'll notice the situation over in Europe, how it's up and down, up and down, up and down. Well, obviously, it's unsustainable. And obviously, the economy is going to take a big fat crap should Europe fall in some way, shape, or form. And I don't mean it's going to crap to the point where, like, we're all living in huts, eating dirt for food. It's not going to be like that, but it is going to be devastating to the point where the purchasing power of the dollar will not be near as much as it was. Not to mention we're printing money out of thin air at a enormous pace, and that's the second subject tonight that we're going to talk about is the Federal Reserve and the actual handlers behind President Obama and Bush and Clinton and Bush and Reagan, and we can go all the way back through time to the year 1913, and even prior to that, when there was a lot of push from these elitists to have an institution like the Federal Reserve put into place. So we'll talk a little bit about that tonight as well, because this all ties in together, believe it or not. And by the end of the 2 hours, you should pretty much understand why executive orders come to be like this. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that Matt Drudge posted this executive order on his site too. But the problem that I have with Matt Drudge, and this could be intentional, it could be totally unintentional, but as he put this on his website, underneath it, he put a website, it went to a blog that actually explained this and said that it is cookie cutter of an executive order that Bill Clinton put out in 1994. And they put side by side certain things or the similarities between this executive order that Obama put out and this executive order that Clinton put out. And they're absolutely right. There are a ton of similarities between these two executive orders. As a matter of fact, if you look at PDD 51 and all the way back to 1950, when these emergency powers were put into play, there are a ton of similarities dating all the way back to 1950. But each time they rewrite this executive order, they're adding little bits and pieces and taking it a step farther each time. Because if it was the same thing, why is there a need to rewrite it or rehash it or put it out on the street unless you're changing something?
Good point.
So I mean, just remember that, folks. It is not cookie cutter what Clinton wrote in 1994, because all Obama would have to do is just keep it going. He doesn't have to redo it. There are executive orders from 30, 40 years ago that are still in place today. They haven't been rewritten. They're still in use today. So when something is rewritten or something is reissued, you have to look at the differences between it and its predecessor to see what changed. And in this case, a lot of the change has to do with labor, slavery, your ability to make a wage under this new system, if it is put into power, is severely curtailed, because if they need you for any reason, or you're a subject matter expert in a certain field and there's a shortage, why, they can take that labor for free, i.e. you, put you to work and not pay you a dime. It also takes into account the possibility that the United States would have to be self-sufficient, meaning that trade, somehow there's a disruption in trade, importing and exporting, between our country and other nations of the world, other producers. So one would have to ask, well, what would cause a disruption like that? You know, could it be regional war? Could it be a currency collapse? It could be anything. And it's responsible for the government to have contingency plans, because it is, after all, the government's responsibility to ensure that we have certain safeguards put into place. I mean, that is the inception. It's a constitutional power of the government, is to safeguard us against certain things. However, working for free, that's not in the Constitution. Oh, no. Slavery? Mm-mm. Now, we went down that road once before, and that didn't work in our history. So, guys, tonight should be a fun and exciting evening. And hopefully, by the end of the night, you'll understand where this comes from and where the power truly lies. Because everybody gets pissed off at Obama. But Obama is merely the little puppet. It's who the hand that's jammed up his ass. That's who you got to see, who that hand's attached to.
What a wonderful visual.
Yeah, well, you know, leave it to us to give you those visuals, folks. That's right. So anyway, that's the agenda for tonight's broadcast. Oh, and look at that! How convenient! It's time for our first break of the evening.
It'll be
So
the
with that-
power within the power tonight.
That's right. So with that said, sit tight. Myself, Uncle Tim here, and Popeye will break this down and get into the Federal Reserve and where the power truly lies. You're listening to Freedom Link Radio's Conspiracy Chronicles. Don't forget, folks, the email address, thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. That's thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. Joe Joseph and Tim Watts here, along with our special guest, Popeye the Sailor Man from federaljack.com.
Lurking.
Working.
No, lurking. I think I saw him in the cupboards. He's looking for food.
Oh, I see. That's one of those things. I understand that. You know, you just got done doing 2 hours of radio. Why not do 2 more?
Looking for coffee in the cupboards is what I'm looking for.
I'll see your 2 and raise you 2. Folks, the Intel Hub has a great article on this. It's Obama Executive Order, Peacetime Martial Law, written by Chris Kitze. And, you know, he kind of breaks it down. It says this executive order was posted on the whitehouse.gov website on Friday, March 16th, 2012, under the name National Defense Resources Preparedness. In a nutshell, it's a blueprint for peacetime martial law, and it gives the president the power to take just about anything deemed necessary for national defense, whatever they decide that is. Folks, if you have a well, I mean, they can come and take it. They can come and take your property. They could do anything like that under this. Now, who's to say that they needed this executive order prior to that? They could take it anyway, right? What do you think, fellas?
Well, it makes you wonder, you know. It's like all of this stuff coming at you all at once, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to swallow.
And again, just boom, 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 boom. It's not like you get a month or 2 respite. You know, it's every couple of weeks. And there's something huge being rolled our way, and now they throw this out. Oh, don't worry. Not going to do anything weird with this or anything.
Well, Popeye, isn't that a difference too, though, man? I mean, think about it. You know, in 1994, this executive order that Clinton put out in '94. It's 12 something. I can't remember the name of it, and I don't have it up. But it was not accompanied by all of this other legislation and other executive order garbage that's come down the pipe in, say, like since December. I mean, this has been a continual bam, bam, bam. I mean, just one after another, never really never seen before in our history. So what's the difference?
Well, the peacetime thing is a little bit different. But see, all this is just a continuation of it's creeping. And the reason why a lot of people are freaking out, by the way, is because people are this in itself is waking people up. There are people going, oh, the conspiracy theorists, they're not crazy.
They were right.
Yeah, and they're having, you could see holy crap. And a lot of us that know this are going, well, of course, blah, 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 blah. But some of it, in their eyes, you have to look at where they're coming from. Yeah, a lot of people are just waking up, and this is like the one thing that pushed them over the edge, knocked them off the fence into reality land, out of that dream state. They are completely through the looking glass, and now they're completely flabbergasted.
You know, how weird is that, dude? I had a conversation with my old man today, and he's been slowly coming around, too, to this whole idea that, oh, boy, things may not be as rosy and that we may not be able to vote our way out of this thing. But I kind of briefly explained things to him today, and he goes, why do you think that they just totally ignored the whole Sheriff Arpaio thing in the Obama birth certificate? He said, why? So that's huge. I said, well, first of all, mainstream media, duh, they're not going to cover it. That's their man. That's their boy. Secondly, it's 6 people that control the entire mainstream media, and that's their boy. So they're not going to report on that. There's no real media. And I said, just suppose for a second that you decide that you want somebody else in that position. What's your choice going to be? You're going to have a poo sandwich or a poo sandwich. Take your pick. Take your pick of the menu selection here. I mean, they're steering who the heck they want to put in. So if Obama doesn't make it, they got the same kind of guy on the other side. Just like we had Bush before. I see these stickers on the cars. Miss me yet? With Bush's mug on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we miss you.
No, it should be a picture of the Constitution or the Bill of Rights and say, miss me yet.
That would be huge. That would be huge. But I mean, they are waking up, and I told him, I said, look just go ahead and watch that Hacking Democracy documentary with Bev Harris. Where was the outrage then? I mean, it just showed that our whole system of government and the way people are elected in this country has been coerced and co-opted now for how long? But where's the outrage? And it's quite simple. People in America still have too much to lose. And it's not until they get forced into a position where they're not paid for their labor and they can't support their family anymore, or they can't have their football anymore, and it really starts to affect them on a personal level, that you're going to start to see people say, oh, wait a minute. No, we can't have that. So, I mean, we're just not there yet as a people. We still have too much to lose. Most of us listening to this broadcast don't. I can tell you that I don't. But there are a lot of people that do. So I kind of feel like, from the perspective of why isn't there more outrage, how come Sheriff Arpaio didn't get more attention? That's because people don't care, because they're too busy with their creature comfortness and their self-centeredness and everything else to worry about that.
I don't know if it's so much that they don't care, Joe, so much as they're just so stupidly gullible that they just totally, absolutely, blindly believe those boneheads on the news, the talking heads, so when they tell them something, they buy it. They're, hook, line, and sinker all the way for them. So I think the day that, someone ever came on and said, hey, by the way, guess what? Those tinfoil hats that live next door to you, they were right. Then, they'll believe it. But
that's right.
It's got to come from the tube. So, yeah, I just think they're too trusting is what I think,
But there is an awakening underway or a shift in consciousness.
You want to see a massive shift? Take out the cable companies. Destroy their I'm not kidding. Destroy the cable companies' transmitting powers or block them, and you will see people wake up. I'm telling you, it would be, and it's going to come to a point where eventually one day it's going to be like They Live, where all of a sudden the transmission stops and people all of a sudden they wake up, and they're going to wake up from this slumber and realize they're going to start looking around them and be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And that's when it's going to be dangerous, because those people, it's going to be like out of the, there is no transition period for those people. Some of those people aren't going to be mentally prepared for that. You know what I mean?
Right. No, but one thing is true, money is the root of all evil. And the banksters and the small cabal of elitists are the ones that are driving all of this. And it's important to know the history about this and where it came from so you can understand why they're doing what they're doing.
And also, you've got to accept the obvious in this, folks. I mean, this is the only way anything like this could be perpetuated. It's got to be deep pockets, big money. Popeye, Joe Joseph, and Tim Watts, we can't pull off jack. But these people that have mega billions in their pocket, they can easily throw millions out the door because they've got billions coming back in the door just to get their agenda.
That's a fact. Money and power corrupt, and boy, these people are as corrupt as they come. And that truly is the reason behind everything that you see, is this greed, this insatiable urge to control, to enslave. And here we are in 2012, and it's crap or get off the pot time, and it's what are you going to do? There's 100 million people in the United States that own 800 million guns. That's a pretty staggering statistic. The people have the power. Now it's time for the people to exercise it and do what we got to do. Folks, when we get back, it's Federal Reserve time. Hooray on Conspiracy Chronicles, so don't go away. And following Freedom Link Radio's Conspiracy Chronicles is my man Ken and the Information Nation. That's 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Join Ken as he goes over all of the information that you need to know. That's right. It's 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on the Orion Talk Radio Network. I'm Joe Joseph, along with Tim Watts, and our guest is Popeye from Down the Rabbit Hole, who said 2 hours? Bah, I must do 4 hours of radio. Ha, ha, ha. And as we kick off the Federal Reserve, I just want to give a quote quickly by Edward Mandell House, who was a scumbag extraordinaire at the turn of the century. It says, very soon, this was Edward Mandell House to Woodrow Wilson at the time. He says, very soon every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people, and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. Very interesting. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer not being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, forever to remain economic slaves through taxation secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser. For not one man in a million could ever figure out our plans, and if by accident one or two would figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap to us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations and leave every American a contributor or to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the highest office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America. What a sick, corrupt bastard. I mean, really.
There's a lot of things about House, and you guys probably know, but he's also the guy that started the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations. 1921, it was started by Edward Mandell House. And he's also the guy, I mean, see, there's so much about him.
He's married into these bloodlines.
He hung out through so many administrations during that time. He's just such a key figure for that era. But he also wrote that novel, that futuristic novel. What was it? Philip Drew Secret, or Philip Drew Administrator. What the? You guys know the book I'm talking about is essentially the blueprint for everything that's happened, up until about right now. And this was a book that was written by House.
It's a good book if you want to learn about House.
Philip Drew Administrator. That was the name of the book.
If you want to learn about House, there's a good book to read. It's about 50 years old now. It's None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen. And this book was written, keep in mind, when you read it, it was written 50 years ago. And when you read the book and you know what's happened between then and now, you're like, everything he has said, almost to a T, has turned out to be absolutely correct. He called 50 years ago, he called out how the Rockefellers were funding both sides of World War II, the Axis and the Allies.
Yeah.
Yep. This goes back very deep, and House is married into these bloodlines that are all, involved in creating the Federal Reserve banking system, or the cartel is what it should be called, because that's what they are. They're a friggin' cartel.
No, they are a cartel.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Timmy.
But his book, Philip Drew Administrator, that's the one that laid out this whole, this whole new society that is basically been embarked upon now, since 9/11.
Right.
And it's all just kind of, straight out of his book.
That's right. And just so everybody knows, anybody that wants to see that book, I just put it in the chat room. And so that is on scribe.com. That's Philip Drew Administrator. So read the book. I mean, it'll make you puke pretty much. But, that's the way it is these days. But isn't it chilling that everything that House said in that little quote has really come to pass? Yeah. I mean, we're there now, dude. And where did it all begin, Tim? Where did it all start?
It's not an accident either, In the whole thing, in this country is a fight for money is essentially it. And it's, the central banks. And we had two of them in this country. And, Andrew Jackson is renowned for killing the last national bank that we had. In 1832, he killed the bank, and in 1833, I know he pulled out all of the U.S. money, and that's what essentially collapsed the last national bank. And the Rothschilds were pretty pissed off about that, so much so that they tried to have Jackson killed. And the guy that tried to, to whack him, both of his pistols misfired, but for the grace of God. And Jackson survived, that Rothschild attempt on his life. And ever since that period, it was a fight in this country, just an incredible behind-the-scenes fight that most people don't know about, that they don't teach us about in school, in grade school, high school, or even college for that matter. But this behind-the-scenes fight for a new central bank, we had three sitting presidents assassinated, within a 34-year period of time, from the Reconstruction era on, right up until the Federal Reserve came around. So there was a lot going on behind the scenes. I mean, if you can get to three presidents and kill them all, and every one of these people was in opposition to, another national bank, another central bank. There was a lot of people that just hated this central bank. You look back at some of the people that fought it biggest. Let's see, Louis T. McFadden, he was huge on, fighting the Federal Reserve, and look what happened to him. This guy was poisoned.
That's right.
So, yeah.
one of his quotes, quote, "We have in this country one of the most corrupt institutions the world has ever known. I refer to the Federal Reserve Board. This evil institution has impoverished the people of the United States and has practically bankrupted our government, and has done this through the corrupt practices of the moneyed vultures who control it." That was Louis T. McFadden, representative from Pennsylvania. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, he also went on to say he was a real staunch critic of it. And there's a lot of people, Tim, including yourself and myself, that thought he was offed, you know, and rightfully so. I mean, the guy he fought the bankers like crazy. You just don't have that anymore. I mean, we've got Ron Paul, and the Fed movement has a lot of steam and a lot of traction. You know, I think more so now than we've seen in a long time. But I think you made a good point to me before the show, Tim, that before the Federal Reserve came about, there was a lot of negative press on these big notable bankers, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, you know, people at that time, you know, were wary of, you know, large banking institutions. They'd already been screwed over, you know, in England, you know, and they remembered, you know, it's like big banks have never been on the side of we the people, you know. So yeah, with good cause, Joe, you know. So
right, and plus Theodore Roosevelt had went on his crusade against the monopolies, the Rockefellers and all that kind of stuff, breaking up Standard Oil. So, I mean, you had that going on at the same time. So, yeah, people had a bad taste in their mouth right around that time for people trying to consolidate power into one area, you know. But I think you said it best. You know, Alexander Hamilton was the guy that first thought that a national bank would be the way to go in this country.
Him and I think Madison. Madison was, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Madison was the guy that was behind the first one, or was it the second one?
I think he was behind the second one. Not the first.
But you're right, you know, there's in Hamilton, so there was a couple of people that were proponents, you know, for having this central bank. So there was this fight going on in the country, but, you know, an even bigger one, and quite obviously going on behind the scenes, you know, with the powers that be.
Absolutely. It's amazing how far back this goes. I mean, you could go back to 1744 and Rothschild saying, "I care not who writes." Crap, I can't even remember the quote because I'm just so irritated. But basically he says, "Who's ever got the money makes the laws, eh?"
Yeah.
And he's totally right. At least these days.
Ladies and gentlemen, this train never stops rolling. You can check out Against the Wall with James Freeland, JJ, Tuesday and Thursday mornings from 8 to 10 Eastern, and Sundays 3 to 5 p.m. right here on Orion Talk Radio. Sunday night, Conspiracy Chronicles with Joe Joseph, Tim Watson, special guest in the house tonight is our man Popeye. And we'd be talking about the Federal Reserve and that tremendous fight that was going on behind the scenes in the United States when they were trying to get that third central bank back into the U.S. The Rothschilds just so desperately wanted to have that other cash cow hooked back in here. And that's the way they controlled us, you know, because that's their interest-bearing, you know, currency. I mean, 3 times, Popeye, in our nation's history, we've been without interest-bearing. Well, I shouldn't say 3 times without, but 3 times we've had, you know, a non-interest-bearing script where we had the colonial script early on, which is what, you know, started to make this country prosperous. We had Lincoln's greenbacks, and then we had Kennedy's attempt with his silver certificates. But with the Federal Reserve System, this is a system of debt. Matter of fact, there's a great quote from, it's from, you guys have had to have heard it before, from the Rockefellers, not the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds early on, where they sent it was a text to somebody writing a letter that they wrote to some New York bankers, and they were talking about, quote, the few who understand the system will either be so interested in its profits or be so dependent upon its favors that there will be no opposition from that class. While on the other hand, the great body of people mentally incapable of comprehending the tremendous advantage that capital derives from the system will bear its burdens without complaint, and perhaps without even suspecting that the system is inimical to their interests. And that was from the Rothschild brothers of London. It says, writing to associates in New York. That was back in 1863, right when they're kind of starting talking about the coup before, Lincoln's even assassinated. So there's just a little bit about how things...
You want to talk about the ultimate coup on the American people besides, 9/11 and blowing Kennedy's head off and everything else?
Sure.
1913, Federal Reserve comes into power. Exactly 20 years later, 1933, United States government declares bankruptcy. So it took them 20 years to completely bankrupt this country. And when they declared bankruptcy, what people don't know is under a bankruptcy, the President of the United States is no longer the executive. The Secretary of Treasury is actually in charge, and he's brought in to manage the bankruptcy. And it's under the Emergency Powers Act, and we've been in this bankruptcy and constant emergency situation since then. And it's the biggest scam in history because the money that is borrowed from China, do you know what's used, Tim, as collateral for that money? Do you know? This isn't a conspiracy. This isn't a. Well, I guess it is a conspiracy, but it's not. It's not a false one.
But I can't imagine we even have any gold left anymore.
No, it's not gold. It's not gold at all. Do you know what's used as collateral for all this money and everything? And why everybody's surprised when they hear humans? Oh my God, slave labor. They would never do that. They could never force you to work. Really? Really? Do you know what's collateral? You, me, and everybody else. That's what birth certificates are for.
Oh, come on, man. We're not just some our birth certificates couldn't be bill of ladings, now could they?
Go look it up on YouTube. You'll see people people calling up the stock exchange.
I've seen this before, yeah. It's a very, very, very interesting topic. We should spend, a show on this sometime, Joe.
Sure, absolutely. It's so important to understand just how much we're not in control. We are in control. It's just that they spin this illusion to make you think you're not. And that's the thing is we really have to take what I hear Popeye say it all the time, and I know I say it all the time, taking personal responsibility for ourselves and not playing or consenting to the system that's currently in place. Like, for example, why? Why do I need a marriage license or permission from the government to get married? What the hell does the government have to do with marriage? And then you look at history and you say, wow, well, look at this. They started marriage licenses to, let's just say they frowned upon interracial marriage after the Civil War. So they said, how can we try and mitigate that? Well, let's institute marriage license. Then they have to come to us for permission to get married, for the government to recognize. And then, they made it even better because with the advent of the Federal Reserve and the IRS, then you have the marriage penalty, and things like that. Further making it harder for you or, to have that marriage. The government just getting more deeply involved. Tim, what does the IRS have to do with marriage?
Yeah, exactly.
Why do they even bring it up? I'm filing married and separate. What? What the hell does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
This is just how much they have their tentacles just entangled around us. We're just engulfed by this Leviathan.
Yeah, and that big monster with all the tentacles is the Federal Reserve System. That is what has swallowed this country. And Popeye's absolutely right. It didn't take that long. I was thinking, around 33, but how long did it take us before we went belly up? That had to have been orchestrated. They had to have known all of that.
Of course. And I mean, they know that the writing's on the wall here too. Just think about it. Over the next, I think it's, first of all, they came out with this Obamacare thing. All of a sudden, guess what, folks? Guess what? It's coming in at double the expense or the cost of what they originally estimated. Remember Obama? Oh, yes, this won't cost any more than $900 million or $900 billion over 10 years, over the next 10 years. That's the cost of Obamacare. And that was the magic number. You had to keep it down. You had to keep it down low. 900 billion. Yeah. It's double that. But that's what they do. And then, you get people that you run into and they're like, well, you know what? I'm voting for Romney because I want change. Okay, you go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead and do that. I mean, Obamacare and Romney care aside, who gives a flying crap? This guy's in bed with these bankers. Don't let anybody fool you.
Can I tell you the whole farce behind voting? I mean, everybody's going to get probably mad at me for saying this, but think about this for a second. You're giving up your power as an individual to have a say in this country to some douchebag that they put up on the stage as some rock star for your rights, and they polarize it so it's left and right, and they get everybody arguing back and forth, and they never get you to really pay attention to what's going on and realize the fact that you don't have a choice. So the only way to start over is to clean everybody out, clean house, and install new rules, and start with fresh volunteers. Volunteerism.
I would even go as far as to say, let's just reset things and start off with a clean slate, i.e., here's the Constitution. Where do we go from there?
That's what I'm saying. Fire them. Fire everybody that's there.
Things have gotten so complicated and convoluted.
Fire them and start holding people accountable and punishing the ones that are guilty for treason and sedition. Well, and for, thousands, if not millions of innocent lives being lost and altered forever. Yes, punish them. And then move on.
And don't forget, folks, that Popeye and I have both volunteered 12 on, 12 off at the gallows.
10-4. I would gladly do my service to this country.
That's right. I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, and by God, I will serve as one of those that help put these people out to pasture.
String them, sling them, and swing them.
And I'm serious about that, folks. It's time. We have lost with this H.R. 347. We've lost our ability to express our disagreement, to air our grievances to the government, because now the Secret Service can say, oh, no, you can't do that. This is a public official. Why? You can't protest in front of him. Let's go to jail. And it's a felony offense now. And Alan Phillips, the vaccine rights attorney, vaccinerights.com, he came on the program and said, oh, yeah, states, local government, even the federal government, they can pass a law saying anything they want, constitutional or not. If they pass it, it's law. It's up to us to fight it. It's up to us to bring it through the court systems. And then you'd have to say, well, the court systems would have to be just now, wouldn't they? And we don't even have that anymore. That's.
Well, you have to understand that the court system that we have today is based off of British Admiralty law. It's not based off the law of the land. It's based off the law of the sea.
Right.
More so British Admiralty law. To understand any of it, to even hold, to stand a chance, you have to read a book called Black's Law Dictionary. It's ridiculous. That's how out of control it is.
Hour number 1 is done. Hour number 2 on the way. So don't go away, folks. We'll be back in about 5-6 minutes. You're listening to Freedom Link Radio's Conspiracy Chronicles on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Absolutely disgusted at some of the comments that I see on the news brief that we just put out. Not so much. As a matter of fact, I'm actually overwhelmed at the positive response and the fact that so many people know about what's going on. But the people that say, oh, it's just nothing. It's just the same old, same old. They wrote about this in 1950. Oh, I guess that makes it okay. Yeah. I guess because Bill Clinton wrote something similar to it in 94. Yeah,
And then when you put your guard down, whammo.
Wham, right. And it's that same lethargy that is prevalent in our society is the reason why the Federal Reserve has been able to grasp the power that it has. But, when it started, Tim, there were some very important families that colluded to bring it about. Isn't that right?
Oh, yeah, and it was all families of wealth. Again, as preposterous as it might sound, or, maybe to some it's an easy reach, but it's the ultra wealthy. These are the folks that have the money to be able to pull off something like this. The average everyday Joe, we don't have the cash to do stuff like this. I mean, you've got, well, first off, let's go a little bit back on, where this all took place at Jekyll Island. And Jekyll Island was this very exclusive resort which was purchased in 1886 as a winter retreat and a hunting lodge for some of the very, very, very wealthy of the United States. J.P. Morgan, I think he was probably one of the principal people in on that buy. But nevertheless, they bought this in 1886 again, for the ultra rich, and by 1900, they said that the representation from the people on Jekyll Island, the club's roster represented 1/6 of not the United States, but the world's wealth. 1/6 of the world's wealth sitting right there on Jekyll Island. And now, so you've got these kind of people that got this kind of money, and they're thinking, hey, why do we got to listen to what everybody else wants to say? We want to run our own little world. This is our utopia. This is what we'd like to see. And so they started this plan, a very secret clandestine plan to usurp our Constitution, take over, our country, our national currency, and steal our sovereignty. And so they did this by meeting in, 1910. They were going on what was supposed to be a fake duck hunting trip. Which was sponsored by Senator Nelson Eldridge. He was, what was he? He was like, he was, help me out, guys. I think, wasn't he something like head of the Treasury, something big there in the U.S. financial system. But he's the one that sponsored this trip to, Jekyll Island. And the people that went along on the trip were Aldrich. He had a fellow named A.P. Andrews. He was the Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Treasury Department. You had Paul Warburg, a big influential name there from the Kuhn Loeb banking interest. Frank Vanderlip from the National City Bank of New York. Henry P. Davison, he was from J.P. Morgan. Charles D. Norton, he was from the First National Bank of New York, also a Morgan-controlled entity. And then Benjamin Strong, once again, another guy from J.P. Morgan interest. And all of them, generally tied in with the Rothschilds. And you know darn well that Rockefeller name wasn't too far from there. So these people all met on Jekyll Island. And Aldrich, he actually told some people that he was told to keep those people there until they figured out how to implement this Federal Reserve System for the United States. And, they went under the cover of code names. They didn't use their own names. Matter of fact, guys, the whole week that they were there, they fired the service for that place, the resort, whatever. They fired all the service, got rid of them, or just laid them off temporarily, and they brought in new service. I want to say it was foreigners and stuff, people that wouldn't recognize these people and know, what was going on, the magnitude of the people that were actually meeting in secret.
Right.
I mean, they went to great lengths to hide this.
Yeah, they did, to hide to make it secret. Absolutely. And they kind of have to because, they need that plausible deniability. And it's worked for them for 100 years, But these families, man, they wielded so much power,
Yeah.
and they still do today.
Well, again, 1/6 of the world's wealth on one little tiny island just off of Georgia.
Amazing.
Yeah, incredible. And there's a lot to those families too, Joe, because we had the 1933 coup on FDR, and what I found interesting in doing some of my reading this afternoon is that this island, this little club, this select club of these ultra elite people that live there on Jekyll Island, that thing went on for about 50, 52, 54 years, and then it suddenly broke up in the 30s. And the reason they gave was, quote, civil unrest and civil issues that were going on in the 30s. And I thought, oh, gee, it wouldn't have had anything to do with that coup on FDR, would it? They all scattered like bilge rats, after that deal. So, but by 1942, that whole Jekyll Island community had been broken up. But the damage was done. They got their Federal Reserve in place in 1913, and the rest is history. As Popeye said, by 1933, we were bankrupt.
Right.
That's incredible.
20 years' time.
Yeah.
That's all it took. And I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that so much shenanigans take place now with regards to the United States, the Federal Reserve, and how much power it wields throughout the world, we'd have probably been bankrupt or rendered useless many years ago. But now, I mean, we're really we're the strong arm of this cabal of banksters. That's what we are. As long as we choose to continue the path that we go down, which is wage relentless war, endless war. They were running out of options, so they said, well, let's have this 9/11 style event, and then we can bring in this enemy that has no face so that we can just wage endless war. And that'll be our justification. And look what it spawned. How many places have we been in just that short period of time from 2001 up till now? I mean, it just goes to show you how much power these bankers actually wield.
It's like you said earlier, Joe. It's the Mayor Amschel Rothschild quote, and the one you were, trying to think of, I remember was, he did not care who wrote the laws because, it was the people who controlled the money. That's who actually controlled the country. And, and he's so very correct. He had it all figured out. He's had it figured out, his family, for hundreds of years. And people need to pay a lot more attention to that family, that's for sure. Rothschilds and Rockefellers and the Morgans still involved, heavily in finance.
And then of course when you do bring up stuff like that, like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and you get that look, oh gosh, another conspiracy theorist. And you know what I found worked, Tim? It's worked on it. You've gone 2 for 2 so far. I just want you to know, and you haven't even known that you have. But I always bring up the argument that if it's so bad to be a conspiracy theorist, right, then how is it that the government can go ahead and put you in prison because of conspiracy? Whether it be conspiracy to commit murder or conspiracy to commit fraud or a conspiracy for this or that. But the moment that you go and look into conspiracy on their end, that you're labeled a whackball, a nut job, that's the thing. And people are like, well, wait a minute. Hey, you're right. That's true. And then they start diving into it, and next thing you know, the rest is history, and there's one more on our side. But that's really what has to happen. People need to understand, first of all, to get past this idea that the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers is nothing more than just, these rich son of a guns that are, they're just average Joe Schmuckatellis like you and me. No, they're evil. They're demons. They're demons that have been here for generations. And they'll stop at nothing, until every human being on this planet is their slave. Folks, we'll be right back in about 3 minutes. Don't go away. More Federal Reserve on the way. You're listening to Freedom Link Radio's Conspiracy Chronicles on the Orion Talk.
Dependable voice.
I'd like to thank everybody for listening to Freedom Link Radio and supporting us and the Orion Talk Radio Network. Don't forget the email address is thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. That's thefreedomlink@centurylink.net. You know, believe it or not, folks, I'm actually to the point now where I'm having trouble keeping up with all the email I'm getting. Holy crap. I never thought I'd see that, but that's good. That's awesome because that's a testament to how many people are actually taking the time to craft an email and that actually plug in enough to do something, to go that extra step. I mean, fabulous work to all you citizen reporters out there for sure. We're talking about the Federal Reserve. Joe Joseph here and Tim Watson, our special guest. Popeye. Oh, gosh.
Wah, 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 wah.
That fizzled.
That's my radio middle finger to you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. This. So, Tim, where do we go from here on our Federal Reserve journey?
Well, you know, it's just for everybody to realize the fact that, you know, this is argued so much still to this day. I mean, the facts are out there. And when I talk to people about conspiracy stuff, I learned long ago to give up on, you know, trying to talk about 9/11 and other things. This is the number one thing I give people because it's something that's so easy to prove. So you want to know something? Who do you think owns the Federal Reserve? And they look at you like, duh, it's the government. I'm like, no. No, they might have an affiliation with the government, but they are not owned by the government. And they go, says who? Say, well, you know, might want to go do your homework and then come back and let's talk. And they'll come back and, you know, sure enough, you know, because again, it's easy to prove. They go, wow, dude, I didn't know. You know, but it's Kucinich used to say all the time, the Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. It's not. I mean, it's a bunch of rich bankers that freaking run this country.
And look what happened to Kucinich.
Yeah, exactly. You know, he's gone, and God forbid, you know, we lose Paul this year too. That'd be a hell of a hit on the Hill. But especially for people that rail against the Federal Reserve, and these were two champions that did that. You know, Kucinich and Paul. These guys have both been vociferous against, railing about it. They've been the Lindbergh and the McFadden of our day. You know. For trying to fight, you know, this institution that has just swallowed our country. And again, that's literally it. I mean, they've swallowed our country. I mean, what we see and what we perceive is a facade that they've left there for the rest of us. You know, while they rake in the billions. I think I've got it on my News Focus site on my economy page somewhere, but a year or so ago they announced, and I don't know why they did, you know, it's probably a bunch of crap to begin with, but you know how much the Federal Reserve had made that year in profit. It was just a staggering freaking amount of money.
Oh yeah,
you know, that they had made on the interest. You know, that for lending us a little bit of cash.
It was I think it was Robert Steele. I have an interview or a presentation that he put out back in 2007 where he was talking about taxing the Federal Reserve because it is a private corporation.
Yep, absolutely.
That the government can tax. He goes, let me just say this. He goes, I can end all our money woes, pay off the national debt, and have more money than we know what to do with if we just tax the Federal Reserve at 0.0006 for every transaction that they do.
Yeah. Yeah, there's two solutions. You either you take over the Federal Reserve, you know, and it becomes, you know, part of the United States Treasury, and you boot out all those other bootlickers and, you know, whatever that have been running the place or milking us dry for years, throw them in prison. Or, you know, you do just, you know, what you were just saying, Joe. So, I mean, there's your options right there. So.
And there's a provision in the Federal Reserve Act for the United States government to buy out the Federal Reserve for something along the lines of like $800 million or something like that. They can buy out the Federal Reserve and take it back over. There's a provision in the Federal Reserve Act for that. But, you know, the thing is you have so many slimy politicians that take so much bankster money to get into office that you're never going to have that. As long as you keep voting for status quo, Democrat, Republican, nothing's ever going to change. And they've got themselves, they are so cocky and they think they've got us so dead to rights that they're doing this way out in the open. I mean, just open air. They don't give a crap what we see anymore. They just put it on the street, baby.
Yeah, and it becomes hard to believe. But again, this is the one thing, folks, that you can prove to yourself. And we're probably preaching to the choir here with this audience, but when you go out and you talk to other people, use this. This is a great example to say, hey, folks, things aren't right here. All is not as you think. And tell them to go look up the Federal Reserve, try to find out who owns it. They're not in the blue pages, the government pages in your phone book. You find them in the white pages right there with all the other, retail businesses. But again, great thing to point out to newbies, people that don't know any better, and say, find out about the Federal Reserve. And when you understand the Federal Reserve, I think this is isn't this 99, year 99, or is it 100 of the Federal Reserve? Because once you understand this entity.
Yeah, they just celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Federal Reserve at Jekyll Island. These jerks actually had the gall, to flaunt it in our face, and had their little 100-year anniversary gala at Jekyll Island at the same hotel.
Is that just this year, since the new year started?
I think it was just since then. Okay,
all right.
So, yeah, that's what these people do. It's funny because it's something that I've always said too. And, a lot of people were like, oh, man, you're on Alex Jones. You're on the radar now. What are you going to do? Aren't you afraid? No, the best place to hide is in plain sight. These people do it all the time. This stuff is so over the top, just so crazy, some of it, that the average Joe Schmuckatelli is just like, no way, that can't be. It's no big deal. And that's the thing, is that they're putting this out, but they just know how lethargic the American public is, or overtaxed, overburdened, whatever you want to call it, that's distracting them from seeing, not seeing this stuff, but taking it seriously, that they just do it with no fear of any form of punishment or consequence whatsoever. Because they know, hey, man, we bought the courts, we bought the government, hell, we bought the police force with the what program is that, Tim? The 1033 program?
1033, yep.
Right, yeah, we're buying the police. We got them bought off. They get their nice shiny body armor and their little battle tanks. Yeah, they love that stuff. Woo! We got them. What else do we need? It's crazy, man, and because they know that the people don't realize the power that they wield. And they're afraid. They're afraid that, oh, yeah, if we speak out about this, they're going to black bag me in the dead of the night. So what? Enough people disappear, guess what? People are going to figure it out. It only takes a little bit of time. And I'm telling you, the alternative media is gaining a lot of traction. Just look, guys, how fast Orion's grown in just the last 6 months.
Yeah, tremendously.
It's crazy. I never thought it would grow this fast. I don't even think Jimmy knew that it would grow this fast. Who knew it would take off like a rocket? But it did. And why? Well, because there's a thirst for information.
Yep, I was just going to say, people are hungry. They're hungry for the truth.
Yeah. So, there is a consciousness shift going on. Just how it plays out, you never know. And one thing that I will always say and maintain is be cautious or wary of people that throw out dates that say it's going to happen at this time or that time. Be very wary of those kind of people, because there are no clairvoyants or soothsayers out there that are going to be able to give you an accurate picture as to what goes down. And I've played the fool a lot of times in believing a lot of what people have said on the internet, just to come to find out that the event that actually unfolds is something that you totally didn't expect. So don't go away, folks. We'll be right back in 3 minutes. You're listening to Conspiracy Chronicles on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Folks, don't forget to tune in every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Radio X with Jimmy X here on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Jimmy's one of those special radio people, you know what I'm saying? So tune in and listen to his show. Joe Joseph here, along with Tim Watts and Popeye from FederalJack.com. and Down the Rabbit Hole on the Orion Talk Radio Network. And we're talking about the Federal Reserve. But before we do, I got to talk about a little something different. Now, yeah, most of everybody out there has a YouTube account or follows YouTube in some way, shape, or form. Guys, what the heck is the deal with everybody doing videos behind the wheel of their car while they're driving? What's going on with that?
I'm guilty. I've
Yeah, but you were actually not filming yourself.
No, I was actually filming. So I was actually filming the two lanes next to me to prove a point of how they were sold off to a private Spanish corporation.
Okay, right. But what I'm saying is what's the deal with everybody that's filming themselves as they're driving down the road talking? I'm just.
Yeah, there's certain people that do that. Just so you know.
I know, but I'm just saying. There's just. What's going on with that? It seems like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let me do that too. What? Oh, I got a request from the chat room, so I have to do it. Timma!
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
So the Federal Reserve has started all of these wars. They really have. They do this. I think one of the best illustrations in recent history about how much power they wield is what we did in Libya.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, think about this just for a second, guys. We have the Federal Reserve and the Western banking system, and then we have Muammar Gaddafi, who brought water to the desert. And I'm not putting this guy on a pedestal by no means. He was a dirtbag. But his people were not as bad off as they lead you to believe. As a matter of fact, the propaganda that was put out there prior to us, or pardon me, NATO, going in and doing what they did, finally by having a gang-style execution of Gaddafi right there, after he had surrendered. This is the guy that used the natural resources of Africa to help gain the freedom of Libya. I mean, what happened was all these natural resources, the funding went back to the people. A lot of it went back to the people. For example, if you got married, there was a certain amount of money that you were given, like $20,000 towards the purchase of a home.
Yeah.
If you bought a car, the government paid for half. You know, I mean, this is just a couple of the things that did. Nobody had an electric bill in Libya.
There was an outrageous standard of living. I mean, the only ones even close to North Africa, you know, and it's obviously not North Africa, but Kuwait, you know, I mean, other than that, I mean, there's nobody around in that area that touches, you know, what they had going on domestically. It was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And trashed.
Oh, yeah. But the problem is that he wasn't taking anything but currency that was backed by something legitimate or gold for his oil, and he was teaching this to the other countries in Africa and the African Union to help them gain their freedom. And the Western banking establishment did not like that one bit. Oh, no, 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 no. Because you can't be a slave if you're free. Those two don't mesh well together, you see.
Thou shalt not opt out of the Federal Reserve System.
And so they had to take Gaddafi out, much the way that they took Saddam out, because he had taken Iraq off the dollar standard for oil and was and actually started the dominoes falling for us in that regard, which is why the dollar as the world's reserve currency is now pretty much a thing of the past. Now you have other countries colluding together to trade within or between themselves using their own currencies. And that was a huge source of funding, not only to the Fed, but to the United States government.
Yeah.
Huge amount of money and still today, Tim, they make a tremendous profit on that.
Yeah, it's all interest-bearing notes, you know. All of it you have to pay the piper on, you know, so it's the greatest scam ever perpetuated on mankind, that's for sure. And it goes back to that, that email I read you guys from just before, Lincoln was assassinated, from the Rothschild, guys saying, oh, yeah, people aren't even going to be, they won't even catch on to this system, And they were right. Pegged it right on the money. And it took a while for people to wake up, and now people are, a little bit awake. But again, folks, this is the thing to press with, people at work when you talk to people about this kind of stuff, and you really don't want to feel outside the norm or a little too weird by bringing up 9/11 or something. Well, Federal Reserve, it's an easy one. It's a slam dunk. And once you prove to them that the Federal Reserve is not federal and it's rich people, and again, not rich people, I should say ultra filthy, stinking wealthy people, trillionaires that run this country.
And I think Paul Warburg said it best when he was testifying before the U.S. Senate. He was a CFR member and one of the architects of the Federal Reserve when he said, "We shall have one government whether or not we like it. The only question is whether world government will be achieved by conquest or consent."
Yep. And he's one of those original 6 guys at Jekyll Island too, so.
Right. And look at how history has kind of gone and progressed since 1913. I mean, here's 1913, and all of a sudden we're thrusted into World War I. We go bankrupt, and not soon after that, Hitler comes into power, and we have World War II, immediately followed by the first unconstitutional war that we had, the Korean conflict, where, it's a police action. We're not really declaring war. We're just going over there to help them out. Right. And onward and upward we go, whether it be Vietnam or whether it be the tryst we had down in Central America or Iraq. Or
don't feel bad if you can't remember all of them, because damn it, there's a lot.
It's tough. Let's go down to Grenada. I mean, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And people will say, well, there's the War Powers Act, and yes, it was passed, but it's not constitutional. That's the thing. And that plays back to what Alan Phillips had said. He says that they could pass any law they want. It's up to us to make sure that we keep them in check. We're the ones that give the Constitution teeth. Without us, it's nothing. It's as worthless as the paper it's printed on, just like the currency.
Yeah, and it's so important to understand that, because when you realize that this is the entity that controls your livelihood, that controls our life, the planet in general, really. You think of the power they wield here in the United States, the Federal Reserve, because that's the central bank for the United States, but there are central banks all around the world, and together that orbit, that satellite of central banks, that's wow. What an incredible power source. So the Federal Reserve is just but one little satellite in this central banking community that controls this world and is working for a new world order.
Central anything, Tim. I mean, just the sound of it just reeks to high heaven of just corruption and just monarchy, central. Blah. I just don't dig it. I don't dig it at all. And none of you should, and I'm sure none of you do. But, I mean, we got to double our efforts here in making people aware. And I wouldn't be saying that right now if I didn't know that, because life experience, folks, tells us a lot of things. That's basically as we kind of journey through life, and believe me, it is rough seas. The fair winds and following seas thing, it'd be nice, but that's not the way life is. So we learn things along the way to kind of help us out. And one thing that I've noticed is it used to be damn hard to make people aware of what was going on. It's not a quarter as hard as it used to be.
No.
It really isn't. So it's time to double our efforts and make people aware, because they sure give us the tools.
Nation is coming up next with our dear friend Ken. You can check him out from 9 to 11 Eastern and 8 to 10 Central. Keep the dial right here where it is, Orion Talk Radio. It is Conspiracy Chronicles with Joe Joseph, Tim Watson, our special guest in the house tonight, Mr. Popeye, and talking about the Federal Reserve System and what it has meant to us in this country. It is the major component for oppression. Everything that's happened to us in this country has happened because of the Federal Reserve System, because of the incredible power that these bankers, they wield over us. And again, these aren't your corner bankers. They're your big central bankers, people from the Federal Reserve cartel, people from the central banks around the world, the IMF banks. This is where all the power comes from in this world, the power to finance wars. And one thing I want to throw out, to Popeye and Joe here in the last few minutes is when you look at everything that's happened to us in the last 20 years, specifically in the last 10 years since 9/11, and you think, how much of all of this is possible had we not had some sort of central reserve system, Federal Reserve System, some sort of behind-the-scenes power structure in America. I mean, how much of any of this could have ever been possible had we not had this system in place, had we not had these people pulling the strings in this country?
Well, I don't know. Popeye, why don't you answer that first, since you've been eerily silent?
Well, I didn't want to hijack the show away from you guys, because you guys are,
come on.
Well, you guys are doing a perfectly fine job.
Now, wait a minute. Now, I try and hijack your show every time I'm on.
I know, but I try to be respectful. That's just the way I am.
I got you. Okay.
I told you, I don't know if you guys heard, but I respect him immensely for his work, because he's a soldier. On my show today, I gave you guys a big shout out, and I told the listeners that I have immense respect for Tim, because
hold on, have I got violins here?
No, you were in the hospital, bro, and you 2 hours later you're on air doing a show, so that's dedication to work. So I don't want to, I'm quiet because I respect what you guys have to say. So, but yeah, I think the control of certain groups and certain individuals has look at what Rockefeller said. Pretty much if it weren't for the newspaper editors not saying anything throughout the years, that they wouldn't have been able to get away with what they got away with, because the general public would have found out and they would have been swinging from trees.
Yeah.
That's paraphrasing it, of course.
But a good way to paraphrase it.
It most certainly is a good way to paraphrase it. But I don't know if people would be necessarily swinging from trees to say, like, let's just say if things went about today, I think that you would still have a level of personal responsibility that is not there anymore. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, that's one of the things I covered on my show today, was people have to start admitting that we were wrong about certain things, and that we all have a certain responsibility. The sooner we admit that there was a problem and that we were wrong about certain things, the sooner we can get through it and move on. It's like anything else. You have to admit there's a problem first before you can take any steps to remedy the problem.
That's right. And Timmy, could you just in 21 seconds or so just sum up the Federal Reserve for me?
No. And this is why they have the war on drugs. Seriously.
Yeah, when you have all this doom and gloom, it's good to just have a little.
That actually about sums it up.
Yeah, no, it really does.
I almost thought I was listening to a regular mainstream media newscaster for a minute. That's about what I hear.
No, but I forgot. There's one thing that we can't forget, and that's, in case anybody doubts about the Federal Reserve, we got our quote from good old Alan G.
Yes.
Yeah, when he was on, who was it? He was on like a PBS with.
He said he was above the president.
Oh yeah. Hang on here. I think I got it here. Let's see if this is it. Oh no, sorry. Sorry, I was playing that for Jimmy during the break.
Oops.
For crying out loud. Yeah, I tell you what, there's just no...
With his deep, dark, throaty voice. The Federal Reserve is above the office of the president because we're banging scumbags.
Yeah, that's just the way my life has to go now. Now, of course, I can't find the frickin'.
Well, what could you say?
But it's Greenwald, talking about the fact that the Fed is, not beholden to anybody. He says they're a private entity, and they don't have to answer to the presidency.
You call Greenspan Greenwald?
Greenspan. I'm sorry.
I thought you said like Griswold. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Dude, there's one thing. If there's one thing that's awesome about Tim, is he has a tendency to murder the last names of these people.
Yes, I do.
So after hanging out with him for a while, you learn Tim speak, and you understand who he's talking about.
Yeah. That's called stroke brain, essentially, is what it is. But yeah.
We love you, Timmy.
There's people in the chat room that are now calling rehab. Just so you know, I just I'll be at the local AA meeting tomorrow night.
Well, here's our boy. Anyway, I finally found him. So here you go.
What is the proper relationship? What should be the proper relationship between a chairman of the Fed and a president of the United States?
Well, first of all, the Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take. So long as that is in place and there is no evidence that the administration or the Congress or anybody else is requesting that we do things other than what we think is the appropriate thing, then what the relationships are don't frankly matter.
I don't really care. Don't you want
to just rip his lips off his face, dude?
That was that was a major FU. Right there. That was just a major FU, so cavalierly. And you can find this video on YouTube, folks. Look for the Alan Greenspan, the video, and you'll find him talking about the Federal Reserve. Just kick back very cavalierly, throw something else at me, dog.
Yeah. No, I just don't know, man.
He's like the Godfather. We are above. We are above.
With that big droopy ass bottom lip.
Yeah.
Just want to freaking rip.
He's got a big old raisin face. We are above the office of the president. We control everything. And then you have David Rockefeller in their background. My precious.
Yeah, behind the scenes. With his hand jammed firmly up Obama's ass.
Yeah. And we would be remiss if we didn't, end tonight before, and talk a little bit about the stooges from the Federal Reserve that still hang on, to society right now. Little Timmy Geithner, and Paulson and Bernanke, and oh my gosh, the scourges of society. And these people need to get arrested. I mean,
but look at them all, man. They're just
a year ago.
They're inbred weenies. Just look at them. I mean, they can't be that. You just have to get over this illusion that they're all powerful. If you strip away the illusion, they're nothing. They're just pathetic pieces of filth.
Who fear every single person listening to this broadcast.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if they sleep at night. I'll bet you they don't.
Oh, by the way, they act all perfect, but do you know that the Rockefeller family and the Rothschild family and all these elite families, when you look into these families, they have multiple children. They have high instances of suicide and drug use and problems and all this other stuff. So these people are far from perfect. Before, you go, well, they are the elites after all, blah, 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 blah. No, they're not. They're just like the hillbillies that, that live down the street, or they're just like your next door neighbor or whoever. They are not better than anybody else. In fact, they actually have, on the average, more problems than most of us do in our families. Like, everybody has that one person in the family that has a problem with something, okay? At least one person, maybe two, maybe even three. But these people have a higher rating, a higher average of drug use, suicide. I'm not kidding. Go look it up. You'll see.
Yeah, they're no better. And there's the old saying that behind every great, fortune lies a great crime. And when you get, to this kind of wealth, where these guys are at, well, damn right. Damn right. The odds that there isn't a crime behind, wealth like this is, I'm sorry. So Rockefellers, Rothschilds, anybody, and again, you know, when Forbes releases their richest people, it's not Slim Hulu, whatever his name is, from Mexico, or Warren Buffett. You know, they're not on the list. Those guys are on the list, but the rich people, like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, they don't put their names up there. They got all that money hidden away in trusts and stuff. So the big money powers, they like to operate behind the scenes.
That's right. So what do we have for Tuesday's broadcast, Timmy? What's to do?
Can I kill him now, Jimmy?
Sorry, man. Folks, don't forget Tuesday evening from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. That's the next edition of Freedom Link Radio. Thanks, Popeye, for coming out tonight, folks. Stay tuned. Ken and the Information Nation is coming up. Until then, I'm Joe Joseph. Have a pleasant evening, everybody. God bless.
Go get him, Marine.